I'm going to brag on you a little bit here. You're just a monster in the industry, and I consider you're one of the icons in the industry. I really do. 25 plus years, sports market, negotiated over $2 billion worth of corporate sponsorship, naming rights across professional, college, grassroots venues. So you were there at the beginning when everybody was kind of getting into this space, and you're a survivor in it for a very long time. There's just a laundry list of naming rights that you did for TD Ameritrade Park in Omaha, which is the home of the World Series, Honda Senda, Oracle Arena, Dick's Sporting Goods, Bank United Center, University of Miami. I mean, the list goes on. I'm sure I missed a couple in there, but now you're the founder of Gemini Sports, and you're deep in relationships with college athletics, professional leagues, corporate America. It's the who's who, and you're right in the middle of it all. A lot because of Street Ball Partners, where a lot of us all kind of started and kind of crossed. I want to talk about is the future of sports sponsorship, naming rights, commercialization of college athletics. And then I definitely want to, I want to talk a little bit about the business side of the Union Jack matchup with Kansas and Arizona State. Did I miss anything in there?
Rob, it's great to be on with you, and like I said, great to connect with a fellow street baller. There's lots of us out there. We got a pretty strong alumni, and our fingerprints are all over this business today. But you mentioned, look, we have watched, 3 decades of this business change from back when I started in it, out of college and uh, to today, and going through pandemics, going through, new leagues, new sporting endeavors, technology entering into our space, and then obviously, where I spend a lot of my time on the sponsorship side. What a sponsor used to do 30 years ago is totally different than how they address it today. And so, like all of us, we've got to adapt and grow. And I think all of us have taken different off ramps in our career on this sports business highway. And like I said, just excited to still be actively involved in the business and still learning, which is what's also fun. And you and I were talking a little bit before, just where our paths and our journeys have taken us, and how we in our, even with a little gray in our hair today, and we still get excited about waking up and working in this business and learning and taking all those years of experience and applying them into new endeavors. So again, great to be with you and to chat with you today.
You mentioned how corporate sponsorship has changed. How has that changed? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from we're in this market, we're world headquarters is based here. We want that space, we want that signage to now when there's a probably more visual, obviously on the ROI of this sponsorship. How is it getting spread out? It's not just a good old boy network anymore. There's got to be some return. How have you seen that from the hospitality to deliverables and the length of these deals? And are there triggers in them now where there maybe weren't years ago? So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, a lot of things. And again, I think it's just been the evolution of just, the games themselves. I mean, what used to be, a very localized event, not as much broadcast driven as it was us, physically being there, the presence, the tickets, the hospitality, certainly the rights and the marks. As we've evolved, I mean, one, just technology has taken the exposure, from what used to be a local broadcast to a national broadcast. Now it's a global broadcast, and it's not even a broadcast anymore. It's a stream. You've got content and shorts and all these other components to where your brand can get exposed. The measurables have changed. And then, yeah, I would say that not only has, the sport gotten more advanced, so has, the process on the brand side, the sponsor side. They've gotten smarter. They've gotten more analytical. And so what used to be the good old boy handshake, I want to sell my beer, I need some tickets to the game and give me some field boards, is now, there's someone in a room that comes back with data analytics to say, we got to make sure we hit this, this, and this before we spend that, that, and that. And understanding what that dynamic is. Now, relationships are still very much a part of this. I teach at ASU and I talk to my students about this all the time. And I know you do with the young people you mentor, is first thing, your most valuable asset in this business are your relationships. And don't ever forget about that. I think about the United commercial where the guy says, I got to go fly and meet an old friend that just fired us because we hadn't seen us in 3 years. We're in a day and age now where meetings are much harder to get because everybody will just prefer to get on a Zoom call. COVID made everybody realize you can still work and connect, but sports and business in general is all about relationships. And I say that's one constant that's remained, but technology has changed. Certainly the dollars have have grown exponentially. We've got so many more options now. Used to be 3 leagues. Now we got 6 major professional leagues, and then we've got global leagues, and we've got brands that are spending. We've got countries that didn't spend money before that are now spending like crazy, acquiring clubs and creating them as tourism outreach platforms for their country. And that didn't exist 30 years ago. And now just it's the evolution. And I say sponsorship has had to adapt all along the way, but it always comes down to creating win-win partnerships that can't be one-sided. And you've got to be able to sit down with whoever your counterpart is on the other side. And if something's going great, hey, how do we keep this going? And if something isn't working, let's figure out how we fix it. Don't ignore it. Don't act like the contract says I'm doing this. The problem's yours. No, if you're in a sponsorship, it's a partnership, and you've got to think ahead. Look out for opportunities to make something better or fix something. And what that does is that just reinforces and strengthens a relationship with that decision maker, because we all know they don't stay at one place for 30 years today. They're moving to the next one and the next one and the next one. And sometimes it's one that's maybe spending more money. So you always want to be on the good side of that contact in this business.
When you see the business shifting from the naming rights, obviously it's important. When you get on college campus, naming rights are usually kind of rooted within the old school donors.
Hmm.
IL pops up, collectives pop up. The old school AD that used to be a coach is no longer. The commercialization of it, private equity that's entering into it. You know a lot of these folks in college athletics. You've been around it forever. You know the commissioners. You hear and talk to them offline about what are they doing. You're bringing a game over to the UK for the first time, regular season game in September, Union Jack. Talk about, and I assume that's going along the lines of donor engagement, other ways to generate revenue that's outside the box. And you guys are ahead of the curve once again. Talk about what you've seen in just the last 5 years and the conversations you've had about revenue generation, creator networks, things that are changing the way that we engage with alums and fans and players and the whole thing.
Well, start from the beginning, and you remember when you and I were in college, we were thankful if we got a little bit of a scholarship money, and we saw sponsors. We played in stadiums named after donors or famous coaches, and that was the norm. And then we started to see some corporate entities starting to move its way into intercollegiate athletics with some naming rights of stadiums and things like that, and that was damn near blasphemous. And now we accelerate to July 1st, 2001, and all of a sudden name, image, and likeness hits, and kids can start making money, using, selling jerseys and doing deals and things like that forever and a day. You couldn't pay them. They couldn't, you could sell a lot of Grant Hill jerseys for Duke, or you name your favorite player at your favorite school. That number 20 jersey, that number 10 jersey, or whatever, Tim Tebow's 15 jersey at Florida, he didn't get a nickel of the royalties off that. University of Florida cashed all that. So now you see the players getting to capture that. But what you also see is that you saw barriers start to break down, because the first thing that hit was we got a payroll to keep. And forever, for all, not to use an old SMU acronym from back in the day, for the guys that actually that listen to this podcast remember that 30 for 30. But they do. That there's a $20.5 million that they're now required to spend against their intercollegiate athletic programs, and that wasn't there before. And when you have that, you got to drive and create more revenue. So what used to be off limits, field, signage on the field, physically on the field. We saw it at bowl games, but that was pristine space. It was your logo in the middle of the field, maybe the conference logo, and then the logos in the end zone were the school logos. Now you're starting to see brands on the 25-yard lines like you do see in the bowl games. Extend that now to what's going to be starting this year is now the one sacred, ground is now the uniform. You're now seeing the branded patches. For those of us that spend a lot of time in the European space, international space, well, soccer jerseys have been on the front of jerseys for decades and years. It was a lot of money. But when we started MLS, it was the name of the team on the front. We couldn't sell the front of the jersey back in the day. And there are probably alumni and donors that are still gasping at the fact that there's going to be a logo on their alma mater's football jersey or basketball jersey or baseball jersey. That's the economics of today. The old school AD was a former coach. I wrote a thesis in 1992 that said that the future of that position is a CEO, no longer a former administrator or coach, because it's business. It's business, and that's where we are. You're running Fortune 100 companies if you're a Power Four Division One athletic director or commissioner. The money is crazy. TV contracts, merchandising, ticket sales, sponsorship, media rights. It's crazy. And you got to understand what that means and how to balance that. No, by the way, you've got, depending on your school, 400 to 600 student athletes that are on some sort of payroll, not under contract, on payroll though. No collective bargaining agreement. They can move freely year to year in a transfer portal that I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, but it does create some challenges as you build your team and your organization, how your coaching staffs how they address recruiting and managing their budget. So it is a whole new world, Rob. And for us to get involved, I'm involved on the commercial side in my day-to-day business from the agency, working with colleges, universities, and brands, how to engage, leverage, and activate those relationships. But also as a promoter with the Union Jack Classic, is like, I want to be part of this. I'm not an AD. I'm not a commissioner. Maybe at one point in my life, I thought that would be a good idea and a lot of fun. And I'm kind of glad that I'm on the outside looking in. But I love the idea of taking a game that I love and you and I both appreciate a lot in college football and exporting it. We've seen is the success in Ireland. We've seen what the NFL has done in taking their games to the UK and then now Europe. And South America, and certainly have gone to Mexico numerous times as well, and heading to Australia this year, is that it's now a global game. The world's ready to consume it. And we feel the same. We felt the same way about college football, and to take it to arguably one of the largest stages in Europe, to Wembley Stadium, the iconic Wembley Stadium, to play the first college football game there this September, was an opportunity for us to go. I wanted to get it. I wanted to be in the arena. I wanted to physically get into the game with my partners, who are all college athletes themselves. We're excited to be part of that and to working with those universities in a different capacity. I'm now the promoter. I am bringing that game over. I'm working with their head football coaches, logistics. I am working with their collectives and their NIL departments, because with each of those schools, we've got players that are assigned to our game that we're paying. We're paying them to promote our game. And that's fun, because these are really fantastic athletes, but they're also future marketers, and they are all just learning how to still learn. There's some that are better than others, but it is a great opportunity to utilize our platform to help grow the game, but also at the same time educate these athletes on what life is ahead of them, because not all of them are going to get to the NFL. Some of them will. Some of them may get a cup of coffee. Some of them may end up playing in Europe like my son. It's a much bigger world today than it was when you and I played. I would have loved a chance to go play in Europe. You did. You went over there and played for a year. I didn't get to do that. We didn't have lacrosse leagues over there then. But now, I've got two sons playing, one playing soccer, one playing football internationally. It's a small world this day. And I go back and I said technology has changed the way we consume sport. But it's also allowed us to really appreciate other parts of the world, and it's not as big and scary as it once was. As late as the late '90s, it was kind of crazy. But now it's hopping on a plane to London or going to Madrid or heading over to Barcelona. Not a big deal, now. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, enjoying the constant evolution of the collegiate athletic space. And now, I get to be part of it at the same time as I was always before from a business standpoint. Now I'm kind of in the game.
Well, you've always been in a game. Hey, you've always been right there, and what I find is very interesting, and I can't wait to hear your piece of it, but I wanna tee this up for you. As since we've seen it from the grassroots level all the way up, and we've seen so many ideations of this. We've seen private equity come in and go out. We've seen the global expansion of the grassroots tours, which we talked about with Hoop It Up in the NFL. And it's kind of coming back around again. And those tours are really about building consumers more than player development, which most people don't know. And now we're coming back to it. 5 years ago, we get hit with NIL, right? So you and I look at it a little bit differently. We look at it as this is more inventory. These student athletes now have the permission to explore and discover their career pathways more so than getting a check to play somewhere because we know that this is long lived unless they can figure out collective bargaining, right? And the schools aren't afraid to get sued. But at the other part of it is 99% of these kids now have the opportunity to be creators, have the opportunity to explore entrepreneurship. I talk a lot about it. And I look at these athletic departments that are thinking, how am I going to retain and recruit and retain these kids above and beyond? Forget the power fours, but above and beyond, hey, I got a chance to jump in a portal and leave. Well, the majority of the kids won't leave if you give them that career pathway and they feel good about that because they know at one school, it's Arizona State is really aggressive in sports innovation, sports technology, and they have a pathway with their global sports. And they've done an unbelievable job at that. And they've discovered that these student athletes, they're the next generation that are creating the way we watch, play, consume sports. Give them that career pathway through innovation is one thing that are going to keep kids at that school, right? Because there's something a little bit more there. With that, all of that said, and if you look ahead 5 to 10 years, what do you think the future of sports innovation tied back to an athletic department and call it NIL, call it kind of the future entrepreneurs that are coming out of these student athletes now that want to be investors, they want to be in private equity, right? They want to be in venture capital. They're more aware of that. What do you see happening, Rob?
Well, there's a couple things, and I mean, obviously a lot to unpack there. But I think when you talk about today's college athlete, you know, first and foremost, they are regardless of the level. And I go back to some of the simple numbers of just being a college athlete puts you already in an elite status. A lot of people kind of it's D1 or bust, right? When you talk about D3, D2, NAIA, and just being a college athlete it puts you in an elite status because the pool continues to shrink. And now, it gives you a platform, whether you're at a D3 school or you're at a Power 4 school, you have a platform. Athletics provides that to you, and you get a chance to grow and to learn, not only, to compete, but now you have this platform of realizing that you yourself are a brand, and how do you actually market that? Most student athletes are figuring out how to get a job, and they're worried about that brand, not as much about their athletic brand. But while you're in that stage, you now have that chance to sell your jersey or to get some royalties off of it, or to engage with sponsors of the organization or the school, and it's almost like another class. You know, I really indicated it's another class, and what I think is we're building a smarter, more aware athlete today. And the one thing that I always try to stress when I get a lot of the grad student, a lot of the transfers in. But at ASU, we have a sports marketing undergraduate and a graduate program, and I get a lot of those fourth and fifth year guys that are coming in, and gals that are athletes coming into ASU that come there because of that program, because they want to. They know that their swimming career is about to end, or their track is about to end, or maybe their basketball or hockey. We got a pretty good hockey team down in Arizona. Who knew, right? But they come in and are want to take that next natural step. And for me, it's been a great opportunity to see these young people embrace and learn at a young age how valuable their name is and how valuable their brand is. And whether they take that into sports or whether they take that into business or anything else they do, teaching, you know, they learned how to leverage it and to activate it. And I think when you're at a school or at a program that allows you to do that, you become even if you're there maybe 1 or 2 years, the connection is much stronger than it would have been if you were just, hey, I'm just here to play ball and I'm moving on. Right. And I think, you and I are 4 year guys, went to school and we live and die with our school. I don't think we could ever understand, we didn't have the opportunities or nor can we understand someone playing 4 years of athletics at four different schools. Who do you pick? What's your alma mater? Where's your degree from? I don't know. We don't know which one I have. I had more fun at one than the other. But if you can create that connection, one, it kind of enhances that donor base. But two, you hit it. There's so many more athletes today that are realizing how to put their money to work, understanding fiducial responsibility, because there's still a lot of those kids today that just got a $1 million NIL deal, have no idea that 47% of it's gone before it hits them. They're like, what? Taxes? What are you talking about? Taxes? I got $1 million. Where's the other? Where's the rest of it? I said, welcome to the world. They're getting that education a lot sooner than they did before, because how many stories have you and I read about, all-American player drafted in the NFL 3 years later, he's broke because he didn't realize about saving money and putting it away, or having the right people around him. They're starting to learn about that sooner than later now. Starting as a freshman, you're figuring that out. So there's still going to be those cases, but they're learning. And again, that's what college is about. College is not all learning, Rob, takes place in the classroom. You and I both know that. We learned a lot of lessons on the asphalt or on those striping fields in the middle of parks, putting basketball goals up and crazy places. We learned a lot. But there's a lot of education that happens along the way. And I think this NIL era has really opened up, the opportunity for these student athletes to understand the business side. And look, there are some very smart young men and women that are playing college athletics, and they are, we know that they're future CEOs and leaders as well. And so I love the fact that those that do go on and play and do well for themselves, one, understand how to grow it, but also understand, hey, I want to give back to to someone or some place that gave me the platform to get here, and have a greater appreciation for it. So I still think we have some work to do there, but the skeptic in me was, we're just paying them. And now what I'm seeing as I start to work closely with them, especially a lot of the Olympic athletes and the Olympic sports, there are some very creative, very talented athletes that are wrestlers and beach volleyball and are swimmers and we don't get to see them on TV a lot, but God, we certainly get fired up about ice skating, gymnastics, and track and field and swimming during our Olympic cycle. And those are programs that are very successful in a lot of schools. And they're athletes that understand that they're not getting big NIL dollars, but what they have is a platform, and they have the opportunity to grow their brand. And they're some of the most creative ones out there, and brands are flocking to them because they do have that following on Twitter, excuse me, X, on IG. They have their Twitch page, or they have a kick account, and they are engaging and they are out there. There are some not just taking a check and hiding and playing ball. They are actually building their brand. And so that's been one of those things that's really been fun to watch.
From the crazy streets of Hoop It Up.
Your career is going to take you, Rob.
You never know. Union Jack Classic between Kansas and Arizona State coming September 18th. Rob and his team are putting that together. You could look at more information there. Definitely reach out to him and connect with him on LinkedIn. And then Gemini Sports, he's been doing since 2002 and naming rights deals. So if you're out there looking for somebody to represent your property, Rob and his team are the ones to do it. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.